Facebook Live, fun stuff. All right, I'll wait for Yins to all come back in. And there we go. Welcome, Stacy, Mara, Sophia, Travis, Jem, all these wonderful people. Hey. Monica, welcome. Sorry about that little confusion. Actually, I think it did go to the Urglaawe group, but I couldn't remember. It just seemed like my sign-in was a little easier than usual, so I thought maybe I made the same mistake as last week. Actually, I do. It's kind of funny because I had this real big creative spurt this morning. Then everything started going a little awry. But it was. I mean, Mara, that thread that you and I were in there, I was not expecting to write that much, but then I decided to just write a rambling post and see where it led. And we may actually have to talk about that more, because when I was looking into the things on that thread, I was kind of interested to discover those newspaper clippings that had talked about the rounding up of Browkers and Browkerins, especially Browkerins. The women were definitely the target, and I think that we need to remind ourselves that we are still a minority, and even if they decided that we were white once they needed our numbers in order to support the establishment, I really can't buy into that establishment patriarchy crap. I'm a firm believer in the ideals that were put forth in the Constitution, but we have strayed very far from that. Okay, anyway, you're welcome, Mara. All right, so Stacy has served as my memory and has told me that we finished with Anvat last week. And for those of you who we did not make a new version of the PDF because we worked on the note rune this week, but we didn't actually publish anything different. So if you don't have the PDF, I'm sure somebody can probably grab the link for how you can download it from Urglaawe.net. It's also in the Urglaawe group, and it's kind of funny because as I said last week, it was actually mostly old information that we had out there already, but it was in multiple documents, and so when I put it all together, I realized just how much we actually had, and it kind of blew my mind. And actually writing out these runes and finishing, we started in the rune go. We started the alphabet a long time ago from the dice perspective, which is definitely different because it I don't know if it was necessarily used in magic the same way as other cultures do, but it was definitely used in healing practice, and also at the base of the hex signs. And just all that discovery and putting things together, and then we started talking, those of us who practice Brahma started talking about some of this stuff, and we actually began to see some of the logic in the assignments of the runes to the 12 elements. The proactive and reactive, I know, has some people confused, and I think we might get through that as we're going along, because the proactive and reactive energy, there is a neutral energy too, but it just is kind of there. If somebody has neutral energy, it's actually usually what you're trying to achieve. All right, let's see. So we don't have the link for the, let's see if I can find it. www.urglaawe.net. And I will get the link to the from last week. Yeah, I should have posted something about the fear too. All right, so let's see. So there's the link. Copy link address, and so you should be able to pull it down. Oh, but I think here's the whole link. That's the whole link. Okay. All right. So Yes, happy Sunday. I'm glad thank you all for putting up with the move in time, but I just was not quite ready for 7 o'clock. But I feel a lot better now. I'm pretty good. All right, so we stopped with Anvat, and I am now looking at the presentation or the document page number 27. And this is the right or the Rod rune. There are actually two names that I came across, right and Rod. And right is definitely the more common of the two that I came across. Rod was more interesting to me because it actually came from my home county. But they both have similar meanings in that right means ride and Rod means wheel. And so the ride refers to any type of journey, and so I always sense that the involvement of a vehicle of some sort was involved in the basic meaning of the route, otherwise, as opposed to just walking or running. The ride, though, could also be seen as riding the world tree or an entity, perhaps even light. Indeed, it is associated with proactive light, and so it's like the journeying, the journey that light does, and or the way that we follow light when we're journeying, or like literally journeying, physical world, and so it refers to the great journeys, and also on the smaller scale, it also refers to the journeys of our lives. And this is actually a rune that we don't quite pursue as much as we probably should in our regular practice, or even for those of us who incorporate runes into our Urglaawe religion. We probably should actually do it more, because part of the whole Urglaawe mindset is to try to understand your purpose in life, and what it is that you would excel at, what your talents are, and why, and what your major contributions to the world could be, and why are you here? Because I think all of us at some point in our lives go through that whole question of, why am I here? And this being a rune that represents your life's journey as much as it represents the great journeys, such as the trajectory of human evolution through this cosmic cycle, or even the evolution of our deities, as they do continue to evolve too. We suspect, because well, why not? We continue to evolve, and they should too, because that is an as below so above thing. But that's obviously just theory. But I personally do believe that our gods are continuing to evolve. They do want us to try to be at the end of this cycle, whenever that would be, where they were at the beginning of it. I do not know that we're going to accomplish that, but that is something that is associated with this rune, is these kinds of ponderings of these mysteries about life journey, life purpose, and the entire wave of humanity and all of existence as it moves through this particular cycle. Now, I will say, in Urglaawe funerary rites, this is actually a rune that we use too. We actually have posted somewhere in the Urglaawe file section our funerary rites, and they are adopted from Braucherei. And part of the funerary rite involves wrapping the body, or the representative of the body, in different colored cloths that represent different stages of the transition from life to rebirth. And the first one is the color red, and it goes along. The Braukers did do this. This is an Urglaawe thing now. We apply the right rune to that. I'm sorry, I'm still having a little trouble thinking here. To the cloth that we apply to the body, and that represents the person's journey in life, and then the journey into death. And it can be kind of a somber thing when you're actually doing it, because when the last time I had to do this, which was just in November, as I was applying the rune to it, I actually stopped and I thought about everything that this person had hoped, dreamed, wanted, everything, and whether or not those needs or desires were met. And so it kind of brought a new dimension onto me personally for this particular rune. And I do think of it, that's something we, as a group in the Rune Guild, the Urglaawe Rune Guild, could actually really kind of study more and try to understand how. And Doug's waving everybody in the can. Say hi to Doug. All right, so keep going. What else? Do I have my notes here? Of course, everything's freezing up now. This is my luck today, I gotta tell you. All right, my computer is having an issue. 1 second. All right, just open up the PowerPoint instead. All right, 1 second. I gotta close Acrobat and reopen it. Oh, there we go. All right. All right. So light sounds wonderful. Love and light and everything. But there are again. Remember that these elements are not necessarily the physical elements that we see in the world around us, but they do have some characteristics associated with them, perhaps. But instead, what the elements are, they represent the creation of things from the primal fire and the primal ice. And so the 12 elements, range from 0 parts ice to 9 parts fire to the reverse. And then you also have spirit and you have earth, which combines all of them. And so light does have, if people have excessive light issues, they actually kind of stand out, because a lot of times it's the exhaustion factor. And those of you who know me pretty well will not be surprised to know that I have actually had diagnoses from Hexeri practitioners in the past of excess light, proactive light that was putting out too much, and that actually they actually had me undergo some things for that I'm not quite ready to talk about, but we will definitely get out there what I can. But they use actually reactive light to try to fight it, but there are other things that we'll see as we go along here. So, rheumatism, exhaustion, they're the excess proactive light afflictions. Proactive light is pervasive, so the rune can be used to combat almost any ailment. That it's kind of like the universal donor blood, which is what, AB positive? No, AB positive. Are they universal receiver? O positive. This one can actually ride to the rescue of other ailments. Somebody's messaging me. Let's make sure it's not urgent. Okay. And so I picture us riding to the rescue, or targeting the exact site and beaming in. That can actually be, when you're dealing with issues with reactive light, or with yeast, you can actually pinpoint it and hit it with the energies from this rune. And it's actually pretty cool, because it actually really has worked in my experience. Again, I don't do this a whole lot currently, because number one, I'm not seeing as many clients as I used to, and number two, because I'm getting old, my memory's not necessarily as strong as it used to be. So I oftentimes have to refer back to the documents to make sure I'm not accidentally applying the wrong opposite rune. But reactive yeast ailments are particularly susceptible to light elemental energies. So fungal infections and bacterial infections can be combated with right. Now, I do want to mention that is one that I did do. Anybody who's ever attended like a discussion with me on the relationship between Urglaawe and Urglaawe and Hexeri might have heard me talk about, use a metaphor regarding ringworm to describe how some people view the differences between Urglaawe and Hexeri. So say you got a ringworm on your hand, all right, and you come to me, and I do little incantations and hit some of this, runic energy of light from the right rune. Well, the client's happy once it's all healed. Hey, he did Urglaawe, he helped me. But now, from the county I grew up in, that's the Urglaawe perspective. You help them. The opposite perspective would be how the county I grew up in interprets Hexeri, which from the ringworm's perspective, you did Hexeri on them. You cursed it, you hurt it, you killed it. It's not that simple, and that's we're going to have to come back to that topic after we're finished discussing this among practitioners who are already in the guild, the Braucherei Guild, we need to understand exactly the relationship between Braucherei and Hexerei. And I will say that the Christian establishment has already used the terms of Urglaawe practitioners of Braucherei and Hexerei in one of their publications, so it's already out there in that regard. But what we're trying to understand is there really a difference between Braucherei and Hexerei? And is there and how do we interpret it from the Urglaawe perspective? Anyway, back to this rune. I got waylaid, which everybody knows happens very easily sometimes, by the thought of the wingworm. So I actually I like this rune. First off, probably because my name starts with an R, but I really do like working with the light energies, and so I'm gonna have to pick back up on that again more often, particularly since I know plenty of people who have exhaustion. That is actually one of our widespread social afflictions, is because most of us are so stressed when we have jobs so stressed from work, and the expectations are so high that we define ourselves by our work, and oftentimes we define our value as humans. It's very difficult. This is we have a very difficult society. We're too large. We have very different segments from one end of the country to the other, and so stress and exhaustion, and I gotta tell you, I know a lot of people with rheumatism too, and other things that go along with that are like wearing red. They tell you, Braucherei tells you to wear a red union suit if you got rheumatism, because you're calling on Thor, Dunal, for healing help. All right. So, anybody have any questions about the right or rod rune as we're going along? We're probably going to. I don't want to eliminate the reference to rod because it was not an insignificant number. Okay, rheumatoid arthritis. Actually, yes, generally it would be considered. What is it? That's reactive, right? That would be, yeah. That's proactive light. So reactive light, or the opposite of that, which is yeast, can actually work on. It can actually work on that. You know what? So I don't know if I talked about this last time, but it's certainly relevant now. When it took me a long time or a while to begin to sense the differences in these energies, because number one, I went out looking for actual physical light projections or something when they were trying to instruct me in it, and I really only had a few visits with anybody who could teach me on this, because they were all from right. I'm going to talk about that in a second with the autoimmune, with the sorry, I got distracted there. Reading the different energies from the room. So, for instance, all right, water. I was looking literally for water in like the body. In some cases, like with edema, you can actually possibly find it. But instead, what they told me to do was just focus on the nuances, like start with fire and then go to ice. And when you feel the differences in the energies between, the runic energies between them, then you can start to gradually move among them, and you can start to feel the slight differences. And eventually, it does kind of take hold, and it becomes a lot easier to actually manage. Now, so regarding rheumatoid arthritis, now I don't know the ins and outs of a lot of the particular autoimmune disorders, but I think that, let's see, I feel like I answered this question somewhere yesterday, or maybe it was about another autoimmune issue, but there are two runes that are pretty closely associated with them. Before I tell anybody the wrong thing, let me just make sure I know what I'm talking about here. That is, sorry, my computer's having a real issue here, but I am not going to reboot it if I don't have to. Let's see. Autoimmune issues can have different causes, and sometimes the causes or the principal cause of them is actually how it's determined what combats it. So take for instance the autoimmune disorder that disproportionately affects Mennonites. That's pure red cell aplasia. That one would actually be considered to be a problem within but that's your body's projecting it out. That's proactive. But there is actually an acquired form of it that can get past the people. That's even rarer than the other one, and I'm not quite sure how that works. But since it comes in from the outside, that would end up generally would be associated with the reactive light. So let's see. And so rheumatoid arthritis, I believe that is an internal struggle. And I think it's actually pretty much associated with the light. But I'm going to tell you what the other runes are as soon as my document finishes opening here. Best laid plans go to waste. My computer's trying to install an update. I don't have room on the drive. That's causing an issue. All right, so let's see. So yeast, some proactive, some autoimmune issues. I would probably actually put rheumatoid arthritis in. I would probably put it in with that. That's that's where a lot of them do fall. Yeah. So you would be using the light to combat that, but you'd be using proactive light to combat the reactive yeast. Yeah, autoimmune issues are difficult, partially because a lot of them are still not even fully understood, and number one, and number two, they do have so many different causes. But again, something that comes from the outside generally, not always, because the other rune that goes along with that proactive venom, that one is proactive venom is, I hate to say this, but is things like HIV that are acquired from outside the body that are viewed as a poison that sickens the whole system. At least that's the way that it came in to be theorized. And so that one, venom can be a great healer. It can also be one of the most damaging of the elements out there. Same with yeast, because yeast represents the fungal infections and things that can go out of control really quickly. So yeah. So the struggle with rheumatoid, yeah, I would for rheumatoid arthritis, I would look toward yeast as being the excess energy that you're putting out. So you actually might want to put more of the runic light energy into you. All right. So again, I'm going to just put the disclaimer out there because I didn't say it today. Nobody actually knows how old this system is. I actually suspect it's relatively young, like within the last 100, 150 years, that somebody got hold of like the older Futhark or something. But these symbols do exist elsewhere in our culture. So not all of them, but many of them do, as we've pointed out before. They are sometimes the basis for some hex signs or for artwork, and there are minor references in other magical traditions and within magical practices within the Deutsch culture. And the thing is that we do have it now, and we're actually beginning to finally put this together. And now that we have more heads actually in it, it's going to be a lot easier to finish. Most of the information about the runes I already have. It's just a matter of getting it all out and organized, because most of the informants really didn't really know a whole lot about it themselves. I didn't know, not a single one of them knew the names of all 24 of the symbols, and many of them didn't even know all 24 of the symbols, and indeed we are still missing. We know that there was an equivalent of P, of the sound P, but we don't know what the symbol was, and we don't know what the name was. So I think that we're going to have to do some reconstruction, like manual reconstruction on that. We think we've come up with an appropriate word related that we can relate to various things that related to that rune, and that's gonna. I'm not gonna. Well, I'll type it in here. People can look it up, but it's the Deutsch word pile. which has multiple meanings. One of the meanings that's associated with it is like like if a lightning strike goes at somebody, the pile is the strike that actually hits it. And but there is trying to work the mystery aspect in, because we actually don't know what we really don't know what it is. We literally have a blank rune. I mean, we don't know the name of it. We don't know the symbol for it. But we actually are going to be discussing that as we go through this entire, as we finish this alphabet. It'll probably be the last one that we do, but we're going to get it done. All right, so I'm going to move on then to Fakal. All right, the only name I've ever come across for this rune is Fakal. And it makes the sound CK in the middle. And it literally means torch, and it also means flashlight. And it's kind of consistent with the meaning of the Kenaz rune. Many say that Thorazaz carries within it. Many say that Kenaz, there's a typo there, carries within it the mysteries of the acquisition and creation of tools. Kenaz, Fakal takes that step. I'm sorry, I was right the first time. There was no typo. Many say that Thorazaz carries within it the mysteries of the acquisition and creation of tools. Kenaz and Fakal also takes that a step farther and talks about the power to master the use of those tools. The torch is controlled fire, a wondrous power that gives us the ability to see in the middle of the night, and that could make the difference between life and death. It is also life force energy within the self. For as long as the fire glows, within us glows, there is life in the body. And so let's see. We also have that. This what page am I on now? I'm on 29. Fakal is associated with the proactive element metal. It exerts itself forward. One Fakal would be associated with spirit or with fire, but the containment feature is critical, and it is metal that allows for a burning fire to be contained. Think of your fire pits. It is interesting to note on the side that the rune of reactive metal is Manaz or Man, and there is an aspect of our bodies serving as vessels for our souls that is akin to the torch serving as a vessel for fire. See, some of this stuff actually gets pretty deep. All runes may aid in all sorts of healing, and that is true. But Fakal is particularly useful in combating issues of water energies, such as the proactive polyuria and some forms of edema or the reactive kidney stones. Fakal is also used in dealing with reactive metal ailments, such as bruising and various mineral deficiencies. That's one I actually did try for a while, because I'm one of those idiots who bruises easily, and now we know why. But it actually, if I applied the rune fairly early on, could be placebo effect, but I didn't bruise nearly as badly. Fakal is also using a booster rune for weakening long-standing ailments or strengthening the body or soul against ailments that have not been tended to, or mental baggage. It has this regenerative quality to it, which means that it gives us more of our own resources in some ways to be able to combat these, which means that you might even consider in some cases looking at it for dealing with some autoimmune issues, as long as you're not stoking your own immune system to your detriment. Moving on again, page 30. And I am cheating. I'm reading. I wrote it so I could read it. But the presence of excessive proactive metal or Fakal energies may be found in clients who engage in some forms of chemical abuse or who have bleeding disorders, including hemophilia. Thus, Fakal is not the best rune to use to deal with long-standing drug abuse. In other words, you could actually end up applying the same energy and making it worse. Making sure I have to check sure nobody's trying to message me about something urgent here. No, okay. All right. So the funny thing about it is that even in Urglaawe there's plenty of history, and there are some things for dealing with alcoholism and stuff, and actually even with some forms of drug abuse. The real problem is the synthetics that have arisen, because we don't always know what the source of it was, to be able to talk to that spirit, the plant spirit, or to intercede with something that we're familiar with. And I've discovered to be particularly problematic with amphetamines of different types. Um, Technically, theoretically, with opioids, you can go talk to the coca plant, although they're not necessarily legal. However, I do know a couple of brokers and a couple of hexaphrine practitioners who actually did have a plant specifically to talk to the spirit um, to aid with. Wait, now is the audio out? Is that what people are trying to message me? 1 second. No? Are we having an audio problem? Did I just see that flash by? Okay, thank you. Yeah, and I think I cited before that some of the more heartrending things come from people who are addicted to synthetic medicines or things that are combined in unusual ways that people 100 years ago couldn't even imagine. It's it can be very difficult because the people who are in those positions are in a really tough spot, and trying to get them to deal with it and trying to intercede for them with these chemicals that you don't even know what they are is very difficult. All right, so anyway, back to the presentation. All right, yeah, for a second there I thought I was going on for 10 minutes or so with nobody actually hearing me. That would be kind of scary. So instead of the Fakal rune in that case, we would switch over to Mon. Now, in the Urglaawe practice, we associate Fakal with the time in the mill. And again, this is another rune that is used in the funerary practices by Urglaawe. And it is the first one is the red one, the red cloth with the right rune representing the journey of the person's life. The second one is the green cloth with the Yor rune representing like the cycle of life, death, and rebirth, the death phase. But the green in Urglaawe, there's a particular shade of green. It's kind of a pale green that is associated with death, and I actually try to avoid wearing that color a lot. But it represents the commending of the body back to nature in whatever form it is, whether it's cremated or I wish we could actually have pyres, or buried, or I'm hoping for that freeze-dried thing, because I don't know if you heard about that. I can't remember what the name of it is, but somebody else here might, where they freeze-dry the body and then they put you on this giant vibrating bed, like thing that shakes you down, and they come out looking like ashes. But I mean, I got to tell you, going out with a big massage like that might be actually a good thing for somebody who gets migraines like me. So then the third one is Fakal, which is the black cloth with the Fakal rune applied to it, and it represents. Let's see. Then usually on our flags, or we have banners. On our banners, the banner is black, but the Fakal rune is white, and that's on purpose because it's representing the higher self, which continues on in the next life, and it literally carries life force energy eternally, as far as we can theorize. As it makes its way through the grinding mill and energies into a new soul construct awaiting rebirth in the Unogegen of the world tree. So that's the regeneration part there. Some folks also have an association between between Kenaz or Fakal, I should actually say, and the goddess Caesar, partially because of the undoing of Knots process, or the doing of Knots process. It's kind of like in their mind, they're making it equivalent. Yeah, thank you, promession. That's the name of the freeze drying process. That process is like the mill in that it changes something, and something emerges on the other side that is different or renewed. And so we have a goddess Caesar presentation somewhere. I think it might be recorded out there somewhere, maybe either on our YouTube or on our Vimeo. If not, I'll have to see. Maybe we didn't. I'm pretty sure Jennifer and I did record it though, and we talk about that in there in a little more detail. Does anybody have any questions on the Fakkel rune? I have to tell you, I don't actually like the name for it, but it is what it is, and it's the torch. And I actually prefer Kenaz in terms, just because I like when the rune sound starts the what you utter, like it's like Fakkel is Fakkel, Kenaz is like you say the K right up the front. A few other runes are kind of difficult like that too. With Ingvaz, you don't really have much of a choice. You have to start out with a vowel. But all right, so next up is the Geva rune, and we did not. Did we talk about Geva last week? I feel like we did, because I feel like we took last week out of order. Can anybody answer me if we did Geva last week? Because I could swear I talked about it being used as sealing. Sorry, my memory hasn't quite recovered from that little migraine. It wasn't even a bad migraine, but whew. Yeah, I think I did talk about this. All right, I'm gonna actually skip Geva unless somebody tells me that we didn't have it, because I think we did it last week. We talked about the full year. I think we did. If we did, maybe we didn't. I don't know. All right, you don't remember? We'll go over it anyway. I might have talked about it to somebody else. To be honest, I'm not even sure. All right, so Geva. This is the only rune in our set that actually appears in a verb form, and it is used freely in Braucherei and Hexerei as a gift to exchange energy among people. It is, you may liberally load people up with this unless they're suffering from excess, with the excess energies associated with it. So we also use it in sealing and opening very often when we're dealing with the pineal gland, so to get the client ready to accept the energies. And I like this rune. I like the meanings of this rune. I like the associations of this rune. And a lot of people do have a tendency to believe that you can't overdo it with this rune, but you actually can. And so it is also the rune of the foliar or foliarin. I feel like we did talk about this, depending on the gender of the entity. And this is the guardian spirit that it attaches itself to one's soul and becomes part of the soul construct. Prior to our birth, actually, I think it actually happens at the mill. This is similar, if not identical, to the concept in other traditions, fetch, or the filgia. I don't know how to pronounce that exactly, but all right. Okay, thank you, Richard. And so this is also the rune of that sacred marriage of the human with this guardian spirit that becomes part of the soul construct. And I think what we talked about was the foliar, what happens when a foliar abandons somebody. I think that did come up somewhere. That might have been actually in chat with an Urglaawe. The foliar may appear as an animal or human spirit. Many traditions hold that the foliar is of the opposite gender from the physical self. Experiences with the foliar of various individuals in our time cord work, however, have indicated this is not always the case. In fact, work done in Braucherei to date has identified same-sex fetches attached to men and women who identify as homosexual. Also, in one case, a woman had two foliar attached to her soul, and the result was a long history of disorientation and schizoid behavior. The foliar is often the portion of consciousness sent out to other realms in journey work and in ancestral and potential descendants contacts. The foliar is often credited in Braucherei with providing the senses of danger and impending doom. This is a function of the foliar's role as a guardian spirit. It is also possible to lose one's foliar through evil or irresponsible actions. I think we listed that out. There's somewhere in the Urglaawe group there is a thread that talks about that, because there were some specific things that were cited about it. Let me see. I'm gonna Thank you for bumping up the Caesar Sega video, Sophia. I want to look for this right here because I'm gonna paste this into the chat if I can find it. Um, we just talked about this like last week or so. Now watch, I won't be able to find it. Oh, here it is. Yeah. All right, we talked about it. It's just that's an older conversation. I'm not going to look for this now because it's going to take up too much time, but we'll try to find it and get it up there because we did talk about the various things that somebody could do that would cause a foliar to abandon somebody. A lot of them involved theft of personal property, particularly stealing from the poor, and there were lists of several other things that are known to be potential reasons that a foliar might abandon a person. And I think one of the questions was, will a foliar come back once they've abandoned it? From what I understand, it's a rare thing that it actually happens, and it's usually to like the worst people, and their lives become hell afterwards because they don't have any guiding principles at all at that point, which isn't particularly good for the rest of us either. But the foliar apparently takes off and goes back to the mill, and might be in a different soul construct by the time somebody reaches out to him. I think I also did describe though that some people actually will try to go and they'll send their foliar out to see if they can get it. That's a practice I can't say I've ever engaged in. I haven't gone foliar chasing. It's kind of interesting because foliar means follower, so you're following the follower. Let's see. So it is a living entity, so it is also subject to vort, and thus may choose to depart from individuals whose actions are detrimental to the foliar's vort and future orleg. It's kind of a weird thing because they're sort of an independent entity, but once they're attached to your soul construct, they're part of you, but yet they can also detach and go out and journey the various realms. The Geva runes reflects the relationship between each individual and the foliar in sacred partnership. It also reflects the giving of one's own energy freely to others. However, given gifts demand a gift in return, with few exceptions, generally covered by proxy giving or paying it forward. So it is also a rune of exchange and compensation. Geva is the rune of elemental reactive air, which is, in and of itself, also an exchange. We breathe in oxygen and exhale carbon dioxide, which aids the world around us. Geva is helpful in dealing with afflictions of proactive air, sleep apnea, for example. Among the reactive air afflictions that are associated with excess Geva energy are asthma. Geva, like Anvat, can aid in issues related to venom, such as proactive autoimmune issues and reactive viruses, microbes, and insect bites. So Geva rune could be coming in handy here. Alex, can you post that question on the Urglaawe group? I don't know if we'll have time to get to it tonight, but my quick answer is I actually really don't care. I mean, I'd actually rather have we're an inclusive people. People can marry into us or whatever, and I have no issue with somebody making hex signs, as long as they're staying true to the cultural reasons for them, and But creativity is creativity. If somebody goes way beyond the cultural perspectives, then I might say, well, don't call it Deitch. But I once bought some beautiful hex signs from a guy named Badger up in Rhode Island. They were beautiful, but he actually stopped making them because he felt like he was appropriating from our culture. I'm like, yeah, but I'm Deitch, and I bought these things, and they're hanging in my house. I mean, you caught the essence of them so well. So, yeah, don't let that stop you. Sorry, I need to stay on track here. All right. Yes, this is a potential rune for COVID-19. It is, and not in the exchange way because you don't want to be passing it on, but it could theoretically be used for it. I have not. I think I actually might have had it. Maybe not. I need to get tested to see if I have the antibodies for it. But and I know some people have it, but I'm not going to apply the runic energies, during this because of my luck. I won't have had it, and I'll get it. But yes, it theoretically could be used for that. Okay, let's see. So, one thing that we have some more information on Geva than we have for some of the other runes is information that relates to plants, because there actually are plant relationships with these elements among some Hexari practitioners. But with Geva, there was one oral reference to a connection between the symbol and two birds, swallows and eagles. The connection is likely in the form of the bird's flight, but beyond that, I'm not sure. Additionally, ferns and lindens have also been listed as associated with this rune. And I find that kind of interesting, particularly since linden is the tree that's associated with Gedreier Eckhart, who is the one who comes to warn the living of the parade of spirits or the wild hunt coming behind him. And it was also a tree that is associated with communication and like people coming together to solve problems. And I guess it's no mistake that the German government is on the street called Unter den Linden, under the lindens, in Berlin. Was it Bonn? I can't remember where it was. So, yeah. So, any questions about the Geva rune? I mean, this one's actually probably has a lot, even more knowledge that we apply right there. Right, that we actually apply on the fly. I mean, okay, I will say one thing. When you're doing Braucherei work and you start to build up, like, what you're doing is, the way we do it anyway, is you have your application hand, you have your pulling hand or your shoeing hand, and as your application hand is pushing in life force energy that is needed, the pulling hand or the shoeing hand is taking out energies that are not needed or that are destructive or harmful, and then you're discarding them, and you have to go and clean them up. And when you're done, and the Geva rune is the principal one that we use to wipe those energies clean. And so it also can be like a smudging rune, if nothing else. It's a nice rune, and I like it. So if there's no other questions about that, I will move on to Vinch. I feel like we talked about this somewhere too. We didn't talk about Vinch last week? All right. Vinch. This rune tends to carry a meaning of joy and optimism. One is reminded that wishes are often complicated endeavors. Be careful what you wish for definitely applies to this rune. Knowing what you want and how to frame and how to express your desires is a conscious, deliberate action. Vinch can help to bring clarity both to the expression and to the reception of that wish. Through a rather complicated set of circumstances, one can draw a relationship between this rune and Voodoo. The reasons for the complications are many, but perhaps the most mitigating factor surrounds the lore not of Voodoo per se, but two characters in the wider Deutsch and international lore to whom he lends at least some of his characteristics, Belsnickel and Santa Claus. Right? You want to get into fights with some Christians, just tell them that Santa Claus is a complicated composite figure that includes the German god Voodoo or Odin. They get all upset. It's Saint Nicholas. So, anyway, yeah, Saint Nicholas was in Turkey, raising reindeer. But we digress. Next page, which is now 36. Santa Claus or St. Nicholas has drawn influence from so many sources, particularly Christian and Gnostic, over the centuries that it is oversimplification to state that he is Voodoo by another name. However, the fact that Santa Claus has pushed his way so far into the consciousness of people all over the world is telling in its own right. For our purposes, though, we're going to just use the oversimplification to talk about this rune. Belsnickel bears some of the same overlays. For those of you who don't know who Belsnickel is, he is kind of like if Santa Claus is the hero, he's kind of the anti-hero. He's the Punisher who shows up before Christmas or Yule and quizzes children, and he's seeking wisdom among the people, and it's all a children's thing now, but again, a lot of things that were originally widespread practices by adults or religious beliefs end up boiled down into children's games or practices, or things that are aimed towards children, or they end up as superstitions, boiled down to what their basic meaning was. And so anyway, Belsnickel shows up. He's all dirty and ratty looking. His name actually means Nicholas in furs, but and some people also say that he may be known as Knecht Ruprecht. We actually see them as separate beings, but yes, anyway. Some also conflated with Krampus, and they do perform a similar role, but we actually don't see the two as being the same. Krampus is a lot more primal. Belsnickel is much more like seeking wisdom and intellect, and then if that is missing, physical prowess. So the way that he did it, and it does vary from region to region in the Daitarai, he shows up, it was usually around the 15th, although a lot of people do it the 5th of November. And this is when the original Pennsylvania Dutch church retreats were. They took place in December, different times. Sometimes they were in Yule, and even today they'll call Halloween Belsnickeling in parts of the Daitarai, and these continue. These actually really do continue in parts of Pennsylvania, West Virginia now. Yes, there is indeed a questions thread in the Facebook group. If you can post there, please. I mean, I'll ask questions here because I've been able to look at it at that point, but if you type a question now, I probably will not see it. Alrighty, so back to this. So Belsnickel shows up, and the way he did it for us is that he would ask us questions, and they were riddles really, and some of them were pretty simple. We were little kids, and if you got the answer right, he would give you a horse chestnut, and that horse chestnut was you were supposed to put out by your stocking or on a plate or your shoe, however you did it, and when Santa Claus came, that was your ticket to get your present. If you didn't answer the question right, you had to go to the lightning round. Okay, and the lightning round was that he had a limited number of horse chestnuts, which was always one less than the number of kids who answered incorrectly. If it was only one kid, he was kind of screwed. But and then he would throw the chestnuts down. You had to vie for them while he didn't really whip. Although prior generations apparently really did whip, but he kind of whipped at your hands with a hickory switch. And so you would, made it harder to grab the chestnuts. Yes, as Michelle's significant other quipped, Belsnickel is like Alex Trebek with a whip. That's gonna be. I'm gonna have to backspace. Anyway, that would make for a very interesting New Year's Eve. But so anyway, so then the kids who got theirs, they were set. They could put that out. Now the kid who didn't get his, ostensibly was supposed to be screwed, but they would always find some way for the kid to do something like a chore or something, and then be able to get the horse chestnut. Belsnickel was a scary character. I mean, he's kind of creepy looking. Hold on, let me find some. I have a depiction of it here. Hold on a second. Where's my Belsnickel? Actually, I have like 800 Belsnickels here, and I can't find any of them. All right. Well, anyway, maybe I put him away when Yule was over, but he comes. His face is black from chimney soot, although we prefer that people use gray instead of black because of chimney soot. And he comes loaded in these stinky furs, and his hair's all raggedy, and he's really scary looking, and he's not pleasant to deal with. But again, it's the wisdom that he's seeking, which is definitely an Odinistic, a Rudanisk quality. Right? And so anyway, so that's one thing right there. So Belsnickel is a very scary character. So Belsnickel bears some of these same overlays in a much tighter geographic context, and we'll look at both of them as being related to Belsnickel and Santa Claus as having some roots of Wodan or Odin in them. Now, Belsnicker's The Seeker of Wisdom, this is page 37, who brings his riddles and somewhat torturous punishments from home to home in the nights close to Yule. I extrapolate a relationship with the Fakkel rune in this case, though none is recorded in the interviews I have done to date. But he's carrying light, and so I see the Fakkel rune there. That's a UPG thing. The interaction with Belsnickel, whether it be an expression of wisdom or foolishness, though the former would be what moves one forward, could relate to aspects of Geva. Then comes the consequence in Vinch. Proper wishes done from awareness and wisdom are rewarded. Ill-planned wishes result in undesired consequences. This matches to a degree what happens in Yuletide. Belsnickel comes and asks a riddle, math problem, etc. A proper response is met with a small gift, the horse chestnut, that may be set out to receive one's greater wishes when Santa Claus comes. Of course, there are variations, and there are the punishments for incorrect answers, and the physical challenges to vie for a horse chestnut, but it is in general parallel to the progression of the runes. That is curious to me. Vinch looks like a W. It's again, this is the runic presentation is on some page earlier in this in the document. You can look. It looks like a W with a line over. It's a very complicated rune compared to the others. It does not resemble the rune of the Elder Futhark at all, though its meanings are similar. Keeping the warning of being careful what you wish for, this rune governs links and bonds among people, friends, family, harmony, fellowship. Its murky, upside-down presence can indicate the opposite of these: alienation, deception, etc. Vinch is a rune of proactive elemental yeast, which places it as an excellent rune to use in remedy against reactive yeast issues. Yeast issues, my accent almost came out, such as bacterial and fungal infections. It can also be used to combat ailments of light, such as proactive exhaustion and rheumatism and reactive stress. Ailments related to excessive proactive yeast are often autoimmune disorders, which may be met with light runes, Right and Sona, and Vinch's reactive counterpart, Engel. All right, so let's see. I think that it's 9 o'clock. We had this scheduled for 1 hour or 1 hour and a half. I don't remember. Right. Yeah. Those of you who are interested in Belsnickel, or you can find a lot about it from the Christian perspective, and it's valid stuff. It's it's very interesting. All right, so do we have any questions on that? All right, let me just see something here. Make sure that we're not going overtime. Okay, good. We have until 9:30, so we'll do Hoggle, and then we'll go on to any questions. Hoggle, did we talk about that one last week? I feel like we talked about this one too, but it could be numerous conversations that have come up ever since. All right, Hoggle. And Rune of Hail. And this rune does have a strong association with the goddess Holla. And since it is a rune of transformation, and Holla is kind of the deity who seems to be most concerned with the life, death, and rebirth cycle, you certainly do get transformed when you're, sent through the mill. So, again, where's my page? So it is hail. The first hailstorm of the year is first transformational. Then it is protective and is definitely associated with Holla. The hailstorm heralds impending changes or shifts, good, bad, or even neutral, from the saved hailstones. They bring Holla's protection and banishment from harm through the changes throughout the year. So what we do is we take hailstones, we put them in our freezer, they serve as protection. Some people traditionally, because there used to not be many freezers around, they would actually take the hailstones and let them melt, and then they would drink it as almost like a communion wine kind of thing, and take Holla's protection into them. This is still a practice throughout Pennsylvania Dutch culture.
Many people don't have the association with Holla. A lot of people do have the association with Holla who don't even know who Holla is, and others don't want to admit that there is an association with Holla. Um, anyway, so refrigeration was a problem. So people would sometimes melt them and then drink them. And sometimes, if they had a lot of them, they would keep them around for a while and use them when needed. So essentially, this is like a Hexenkopf water for those of you who are familiar with that. Hexenkopf being a sacred site here in Pennsylvania that is kind of mirrors one over in Germany, and the water from the springs there is considered sacred, and we do use it as holy water on our altars. But that water we would never drink. This water is actually, hail water is actually usually safe to drink. Aspects of this tradition, this is page 40 now, appear to be echoes of the Hoggle rune, which in Dutch use has meanings akin to Hagelaz and the Anglo-Saxon Hagel. The structure of the Dutch rune looks more like that of the younger Futhark than of the elder Futhark. However, it is just as frequently depicted standing on two of its legs, as it is on one. And I know that we talked about this, maybe not in this session, might have been a different one, because I remember coming over here and showing people what the Hoggle rune looks like. I hope you can see it because I can't see what I'm aiming at. But yes, it's that rune, that hex sign in the middle with that rosette that's on its side. Okay, that is what the Hoggle rune looks like. Although sometimes it is pivoted, so it's standing on one leaf of the rosette. And that hex sign actually has some of the same meanings, which we're going to go into in a second here, I believe. Okay. I know you're not supposed to read from PowerPoint presentations, but this is way too much energy, way too much to remember at my ripe old age. All right, so the same circumstance applies to the common 6-point rosettes symbols on hex signs, and many people believe that this rune and the rosette are related. There could be multiple streams of that also, because that's a fairly common sign. But indeed, the meaning of the rosette in hex signs is similar to that of the Hoggle rune, banishment and protection. Hoggle is a rune of proactive elemental spirit, which places it useful in dealing with issues associated with the reactive spirit, depression, grief, death, and with elemental earth issues, often digestive disorders, particularly of the reactive type, diarrhea, food poisoning, parasitic infections. But of course, always you'll see a doctor, don't rely on the runes. Don't rely only on the runes. Slide 42. The rune may also be used in the general application of protection and also for transformation of the mind, of understanding, and in interpersonal relationships. It may be applied for good or ill, for terminations to allow new beginnings, for bringing about or confronting radical change, for inciting change in the defense of others. For inciting change in the self or others, although you really should be careful about inciting change in others without permission, for the expulsion of unwanted baggage on the mind and in the soul, and for dealing with the shadow of the self and the shadow sides of others. There is no rune in the Dutch practice more associated with both the application and the blocking or deflection of hexes, and indeed, skilled practitioners can use Hoggle to transform hexes into blessings that draw energy from the sender. It is also the most commonly used rune in Urglaawe house blessings. So in other words, this is a big deal rune, which actually should not be a surprise because there's a reason that's associated with Holla as the chiefess of our tradition, number one, but also she is seen as the mother of the Dutch by many syncretic practitioners because she was the one who pushed the boats off the who loaded us up in the boats and had us go. Obviously, Christians would have a different perspective there, but each his or her own. All right, next slide. So yeah, but you might want to read that slide again on your time because it really is worth noticing just how complex this rune is, and this is actual living information. I probably have more in this rune just from the practitioners who I interviewed, but also people who knew what it meant and those who practice hexology and the meaning of the hex signs. All right, so slide 43. Along with Loch, or Lagus, Hoggle is a rune of mirrors, which brings in aspects associated with Berkta as well. While Loch is the reactive side of the mirror, that which looks back at the view, proactive Hoggle is the eye seeking answers in the mirror. It is the seeker of wisdom, insight, and truth, and it is that which causes the active deflection of harm. This is pretty esoteric stuff, but mirrors are used in Braucherei and in Hexerei for protection, for seeking, but also for looking back upon things. And we also have our trickster character Till, whose last name Eilish actually means owl mirror, which is because it's a reflection of conventional wisdom. Hoggle, in both physical and runic form, has long-standing traditions within the Deutsch culture, and its lore and applications will continue to grow as Urglaawe evolves. All right, so yeah, this one's kind of busy. I mean, I remember like when I was a newbie heathen, and I would come across people who were like fear-struck if they drew the Hagalaz rune out of their rune set because they were, oh my god, I'm gonna die. It's not so much about death, although death is certainly transformation, as it is about processes and changing things and sometimes ending cycles and beginning them again, which relates it in a way to Yar, but this is usually a little more serious, but it can also be mundane. The mundane transformations, the mundane things you do a lot. Changing your hairstyle, that's a transformation. It doesn't mean you necessarily had to call upon the rune to, the Hoggle rune to accomplish it, but we do transformations all the time. And so being afraid of the rune because they think it symbolizes something very drastic, which it can, but usually it's something that's a little more, mundane and applicable, or sometimes it's a warning that you need to put up defenses. Mirrors are used actually literally and figuratively in some hexerei practices, where the sick people, if they felt they were being hexed, they would actually put mirrors around their beds facing outwards so that the hexing energy would be deflected. And also there are like visioning mirrors around yourself, protecting yourself is a common sympathetic working, and sometimes people put mirrors around pictures of people as sympathetic workings. It's all pretty common stuff. It's kind of cool in a way. Mirrors with their bad luck elements, really, that only happens in our lore. I don't even know where the whole myth or the whole legend of breaking a mirror causing 7 years bad luck comes from. I'm not sure if it's Germanic or not, but in our lore, it only actually is bad luck if the mirror has witnessed something bad that's retained on the other side. All right, so anyway, that's what I got. Unless you have questions, I'm gonna go look at the Urglaawe group to see what we got there, if any, and then we can just have free chat if we need to. All right. Urglaawe. Thank you all for sticking with me. I'm still not thinking 100% straight, but alrighty, where's my question thread? Here it is. All right. So, right. Is this recorded? Yes, it is recorded. All right, so you're asking, what's this? You're asking about whether hay fever would be handled with the Gaber rune? Is that what the question is? All right. Let's see. What's the chat room here? I'm going to go with the question of whether that's what that refers to. Different types of allergies actually could fall under different places, because some of them are your body's like reaction. I mean, they're all their body's reaction, but some of them are induced from the outside, some of them are induced from the inside, and so some of them can fall into the same place as the autoimmunes. But I would actually say that Geva could be a very useful rune or a very expressive rune with hay fever. It is. Hold on 1 second here. I gotta check something because I think I have a note about this about hay fever somewhere. Gotta search my drive. There's lots of plants lots of plants like stinging nettles which are still up right now that can actually be very helpful with some allergies, some seasonal allergies. I can't find it. Maybe I didn't make one, but I thought I had a reference somewhere to hay fever and Geva, but also with venom. Yeah, but let's see. So if you have hay fever is generally your body's reaction to the coming in the irritants of pollen. So in this case, I would actually say that hay fever is a form of reactive air, excess reactive air energy. So I would go with proactive air or other things to combat that. So yes, I would definitely put hay fever in. I think I wrote that somewhere, but can't find it right now, and that's what I needed. So let's see what else we got. That's the only question we have. Okay. Well, I'm going to answer Alex's question then because I kind of answered it already, but I personally, as a Deitcher, do not have any issue with people who are not Deitch using our artistic works, our artistic methods for their own reasons. Okay, Mara, I will answer that then. Hold on a second. Because in a way, it's kind of, I think it's a compliment to the culture in a way that something resonates with people from outside of it. It's and like I said, the guy Badger, he produced some beautiful, beautiful work, and I was kind of sad to see that be lost. And yeah, it's kind of funny when Doug will probably even know what I'm talking about as soon as I start to talk about it. But when we were on Hawaii, and what did they say about you could take like rocks or something, but you had to ask permission from a native Hawaiian, or something like that.
Charge for it.
And yeah, a lot of them charge for it too. Then, and but you don't need to ask a native Pennsylvania Dutchman for permission to do the work. If you're doing something that's way outside the culture, you can say it's inspired by the culture or something. But again, we're proud of our heritage, we're proud of our contributions, but we're proud of our uniqueness. But every culture should be proud of its uniqueness and its heritage and everything. So we welcome people who find interesting. Again, to be an Urglaawe, you do not have to be Deitch at all. So many people share a common mindset, are seeking some of the things that are alive within the Deitch culture, are within Urglaawe. We welcome them to come and hang out with us, and they become members of us without the bloodline. Just is not an issue to me. We've seen enough trouble with that being an impetus for belief in superiority in the past, and thankfully some things were retained among the Deitch that the Nazis abused over there, but we were able to keep sheltered here. So anyway, hoggle and looms. How is that historically used? Well, I've had 5 or 6 tweets on looms, older looms from like the 1800s, that on which they found those little rosette signs, but they weren't always in a circle. They were sometimes just the actual rosette drawn out in a manner similar to the way that the angle room was being carved in granaries. On the looms, they were actually physically etched into the structure, and they appeared to be done ritually on the 2 that I saw. I only heard reports on the other one. No, somebody sent me a picture of one, but it wasn't very clear. But on the 2 that I saw, it looked like it was done like very specifically in groups of 3 on each side of the one loom. On the other one, it was a little clumsier, it was, but the room was much larger, and it was on every piece of wood that constructed the loom, and so again, this and even the people who owned it kind of believe that this was a association with the Germanic goddesses because of flax, and with the rune hoggle being so closely associated with Holla, flax is also associated with Holla because she gave, in our tradition, she gave flax to humanity, and indeed one of the markers, one of the landmarks in the Dunkelgegend is the field of flax, and so that's it's kind of a dot connecting thing, but the hog was definitely specifically there, and even some of the syncretic or some of the more skeptical Christian but open-minded ones actually did accept that this probably was indeed the Hoggle rune. And it keeps the loom safe, but it also brings Holla's blessings or Holla's attention to the workings of the cloth as it goes through. And that's why I think the one that actually had it on every piece of wood, it was, there was huge in some areas, smaller in some of the others. I think that actually resonated with me more because it was the entire structure that had this on, as opposed to the other one that only had it on the perimeter of it. As the cloth passing through other sections of the loom, it's supposed to be picking up these blessings from the blessings of Holla from the Hoggle rune as it goes through. So it's kind of interesting. Yeah. Yeah, and I see what Sophia's saying there, and she's absolutely correct. We have 24, although one of them we know existed, but we don't know what the name was. We don't know what it looked like, and ironically, it would be the equivalent of the sound P, so it would be the counterpart to the Elder Futhark's Perthrow, which is sort of funny because, as I said earlier, since we don't have a symbol for it or a name for it, we literally do have a blank rune. But okay, sorry. Well, the microphone, I don't know why it's fading out. Could also be my voice. All right. Reading up here. And also, I guess necessity is the mother of invention. The Elhaz rune, rather than making the Z sound, makes the sh sound, which is so common in Deutsch that I guess somebody figured out that we need a rune for it, but we don't know how old that one is either. But it has the same meaning because the word for it is shield, which actually means shield. And the Z sound is done by the Suna rune, the equivalent of Sovilo. So it does both S and Z. And the actual Z sound is not as Z is not as common in Deutsch as it is in German. The harder S is much more common. And if you ever see anything that looks like a Z in Deutsch, which is very common, it is not pronounced like a Z, it is pronounced like a TS. All right, let's see. Time is it? We have 9 more minutes. Let's see if there's anything else that's being asked here. Right. Okay. So any other questions that we got? How about thoughts? Ideas? Right. Yes. Kimberly, the runes have their own meanings. The runes exist by themselves, and so when you buy it, the symbol itself has some intention in it already. It has its own intention, it has its own essence, I should say. And yes, one does not need to be a Browker to access the runes. The runes are. Again, one of the differences in our tradition from the Norse is that although we do have some inklings that Rudon played a role in them, we actually think the runes existed forever. Although obviously the alphabet, the actual structure of the alphabet, might have roots in Etruscan. In the Etruscan culture, but that doesn't mean that the energies that are behind those symbols are not eternal. And so the myth is that magic of all kinds and life force energy come from the eastern leaves are the Oschdret of the world tree, which is the realm that in which the Weißkäppige Frau, or the white-haired woman, resides. That's where her hall is, or her medical center, or however you want to view it. She is the very personification of life force energy. Those who have encountered her know that when you've encountered her, because like your whole consciousness is momentarily just full of this radiant light that it's almost blinding to your mind's eye. But so the runic energies are also part of that. So the runes have always existed inside the world tree. Now, as we were discussing this was a topic that we had in the Urglaawe group. As we were discussing this, it made me think, but one of the things that we don't know is which side of the world tree did Odin hang himself on? Maybe he hung himself on the eastern leaves and pulled the runes from there. We don't know. But there is an association between Wodan and the runes, but it's not nearly as strong as the remnant of whatever this little story is that of the place where magic, runic energies, and life force energy come from. Because essentially, runic energies are a form of life force energy, and that is life force energy is what we deal with in Braucherei, and numerous cultures tap into this same energy. Like Reiki uses the same energies, they just use it in a manner that's specific to their culture. So let's see. So we're pretty much done. One thing that I do want to draw your attention to is this morning I was feeling creative, which often happens before a headache sets in, and we somehow got on a topic that I actually missed the original post on, and but then I started this rambling thing. I'm trying to find the thread. I got pushed down the list already, but I do encourage people to read it. It's I'm gonna have to post a link to it because it got pushed down. Scroll down the Urglaawe group so far, so I'm gonna look up the word rambling. Good grief, I ramble a lot, don't I? It's not turning up. I'll have to find it later. But there is a post that I put up today. It's in the comments, but I do encourage people to read it because it contains a lot of information about the attempts to suppress the Dutch culture, particularly the prosecutions of female Braucherins, or women who practiced Braucherei during the 1920s and the 1930s. And in the process of getting that ready today, I came across some newspaper clippings that were obviously biased journalism, interestingly from newspapers that were founded by the Dutch, and it gets across this. It was very insidious. It was sometimes subtle, but they also made examples out of some of these people, and the fact that women were allowed to practice this form of medicine was already considered scandalous by the English early on, but we Dutch follow our own way, and there's a reason that so many goddesses are at the forefront of our practices. It's not out of balance. The male-female energies, all energies need to be balanced, and we do have some references to other gender identities in Hexerei, but the terms that they use would nowadays be considered to be slanderous. Not intentionally, because at the time they may not have been, but I'm not comfortable putting them out there. It's something that we're going to have to discuss among the practitioners, and to get out these 12 gender identities in a way that is at least not insulting. The thread I put up, it was, I transferred it over from Urglaawe Live Fimf's event page. And I posted it there. Hold on, because it was in the Urglaawe Fimf event page first. but then nobody would see it there. But should be in the main Urglaawe group. But it was just today. I hope I posted the right place. All right, well, I'll have to find it because there was something important in it. And it really is important for us to know the history of the culture, even if it's just, even if you're not a practitioner of this stuff. It's important to know that these bigotries happened, and they still do happen. And we were specifically targeted because of anti-German sentiment at the time. And but it really bothers me that it was targeting the women specifically. Okay, so Mara just found it. So she just liked it. So the post is, let me see if I can find it. Come on, give me my notification, because then I can post a link to the group, and then we could all be happy and done. Right, there it is. Right, so let me get the post up, and there's the timestamp. That should give me my link. There it is. If I could highlight it without my computer crashing, Control C. I can post this to the group. Try again, Control C. And I'm going to post this into the chat window, and somebody can open it and tell me whether or not it opens the post. Actually, I'll just try another screen too. It's in the comment section. Yep. Open to the right post. Does it open to the right post? Please open to the right post. It does open to the right post. Okay, so that link that I just posted in the chat, use that link to get to the post. And when I wrote it, I realized it would actually take 4 comment fields to actually be able to post it. So I'm sorry, I do ramble a lot, but sometimes that rambling does provide a lot of information, and usually there is some sort of connection there. I kind of do a Hola-esque spiral, and but really need to be careful because although we have lots of liberties today, and the church doesn't have the power that it used to have, it still does have some power, and especially in academia, believe it or not. I hate to say it, but public funding notwithstanding, there are a lot of people who are afraid to piss off the Christian communities near some of these colleges, and so a lot of times they just try to shut out opposition, and we don't really care necessarily so much anymore. We're doing our own thing, but the point is that you never know when the power is going to shift, and Christianity does not have the best history. Not all Christians. I'll make sure we're clear there. There are lots of Christian churches who would never persecute anybody. However, the ones that have historically, we still need to be aware of today because they are still not necessarily our friends. So anyway, so with that, I will let you all go, and thank you all for coming. Sorry that I'm kind of still a little bit headachy here, and but I'm glad I was able to get it done because I know a lot of you were looking forward to it, which I also appreciate. So thank you very much. And so like I said, the next one we might violate Facebook's community standards because this was number Fimf 5, and the next one would be number 6, sex, which is spelled S-E-X in Dutch, and so we would be having Urglaawe live sex. And, I'm going to probably just use the numeral or something for this one, or I might actually spell it in the German way, even though I don't like to spell Dutch words in German. But all right, so everybody, hail and take care. Thank you very much.